Hello everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We join you today from the Oklahoma State University campus and a sea of orange for homecoming week. We'll have something special to show our cowboy spirit a little later in the show. But first, a sea of green is emerging across Oklahoma fields as those fall planted crops start to show up. Our SUNUP's Austin Moore has a wheat and canola planting update.
These past few years have been hard on our cropland and those who tend to it. But this year, we're seeing just how much good a little rain can do.
I think the good moisture that we have and the good prospects for this year's wheat crop generally has our farmers in a pretty good mood. We have a few areas of the state around Altus that have missed out on all of the moisture, and they're still in the same shape they've been in for the past couple of years, extremely dry. But with that exception, I think we're in pretty good shape around the state, and I think we're on our way to a decent crop.
That optimism has tractors rolling across the state.
We're approximately 50% planted in terms of our wheat acres. We've gotten rain across most of the state, and as soon as things dry out, we'll be back in it pretty hard, and I think we'll be wrapped up hopefully by the end of October. We got a little bit of a late start this year. Normally we like to have a lot of our wheat in early September, and because of the lack of rainfall, we didn't get most of that wheat in until around the end of September. So as a result, our wheat is not quite as far along as we would like for it to be in terms of our dual purpose acres, and wheat pasture could be a little bit short this year. I think we're going to have some wheat pasture, but not quite where we would like to be in terms of that early sown wheat.
Canola planting should be largely wrapped up in the state, as seed had to be in the ground by October 10th for full insurance.
We still have a few guys out there. Once it dries up, they might fill in some gaps in their fields, do some replanting here and there, but for the most part, majority of the state is completed as far as canola planting goes. We kind of have a feel. We definitely noticed a large increase in acres this year. It's really hard to determine the actual amount of acres, but according to seed sales and working with a lot of new producers this year, we're thinking somewhere in the southern Great Plains, the Oklahoma predominantly, and a little in Kansas and Texas, we're probably going to be somewhere around 400,000 to 500,000 acres of canola this year.
All of this is good news for producers. But caution is wise, with the finish line for these crops still more than half a year away.
We have good subsoil moisture, and now we have good topsoil moisture. So we're in pretty good shape for the next couple of months. Our wheat crop should get off to a really good start. We're going to need some more moisture throughout the winter, though, to keep us going. We're still a long way from making this wheat crop, but we are off to a good start.
And that helps us out a lot, getting the crop established, getting the root system growing. We can handle those earlier light freezes a lot better than if we were completely parched to moisture. We saw that especially last year where we had kind of a combination of dry soils and early freezes. But with the moisture, we can handle those early freezes a lot better.
In the meantime, there is plenty for producers to keep an eye on.
Most of them are up and out of the ground and kind of at that 3 to 4 leaves, about the time when we need to start spraying with herbicides, especially if we have some of these flushes of weeds come up from these rains. It's been kind of hit or miss on stands as far as how fast they've came out of the ground. We've had some producers have some soil crusting issues that's kind of delayed their emergence. But as far as deciding when and if you need to replant, basically if you can still go out and find germinated seedlings underneath the soil that are kind of white and plump hypocotyls, more than likely it's still trying to push through, but once it does die, it usually shrivels away pretty quickly.
This is also an important time to be in the field, scouting for trouble.
It's important to go ahead and monitor that crop and make sure we don't have anything this fall that's going to damage it. Right now it's turning colder, but we still have a few grasshoppers out there, potential for army worms. So it's important to regularly scout that wheat that is up. It'll be time to make those weed control applications before we know it. One of the most important things with weed control this fall that a grower can do is to accurately identify which weeds they have present, especially those grassy weeds. We have different herbicides that have different levels of efficacy depending on which weed that you have, which grassy weed. So it's extremely important to have those properly identified. A lot of times the easiest way to do that is to dig those weeds up and look at the seed, and that makes it a little bit easier to identify them that way.
Canola isn't very competitive as a seedling, so we need to do our due diligence and go out and scout fields, and if we need to get a herbicide out there, make sure we get out there as soon as we can. Usually that first flush of weeds is going to be the most detrimental on the canola yields. And while you're out, be looking for some worms. Most of the seed comes treated with an insecticide, which works excellent for aphid control, but doesn't do much for Lepidoptera. So get out there, look for diamondback moth larvae, look for cutworms, and any other kind of pests that might be out there.
And one last bit of advice on nutrient management.
And the other thing farmers should do right now is consider putting out a nitrogen-rich strip. That's one of the most important things they can do for their wheat crop, is get those out this fall.
For SUNUP, I'm Austin Moore.
From issues in the field to issues in Washington. Joining us now is Jody Campeacci, our Ag Policy Specialist. Jody, the government reopened finally. Clearly this must be a relief for farmers and ranchers.
Yes, I would imagine that it's a big relief for farmers and ranchers. Due to the shutdown and the Farm Bill expiration, there's just been a lot more uncertainty, less commodity reports. So farmers have just been, a little on edge about what's happening next in Washington.
And it'll be good to know that some of the farm programs will continue on for now.
Yes, for now they will continue. The Farm Bill expired, but most of the commodity programs that our Oklahoma producers receive, they'll still receive those payments because they're based on the previous marketing year.
And as the USDA reorganizes after the break, there will be some limitations for you and your colleagues who analyze USDA data information?
Yes, definitely. While the USDA was shut down, some of the government reports, commodity reports, were actually not completed, and they've released a statement that those reports will actually not be completed, and instead we'll have to wait a little bit longer to get some of the information.
And I know for you that was frustrating because that's something you keep an eye on daily. So what will this mean going forward if you don't have 3 or 4 weeks worth of material?
Could just make some of the commodity markets a little bit more volatile. So as we're looking at some of the data, there'll be a bit more discrepancy between some of the private data and the USDA data.
Okay, as Washington gets reorganized, let's talk about the Farm Bill, and hopefully we'll start seeing some progress there.
Yes, the House actually recently announced that they will go to conference with the Senate soon once both parties are back in Washington and both back in session. That's anticipated towards the end of October into November.
Okay, and no doubt you'll keep us posted on that. Finally today, Governor Fallon issued some disaster declarations in terms of drought in Oklahoma. Give us some perspective on that.
Yes, earlier this week she did announce that she was authorizing the Emergency Drought Fund. And what happens with that is once she enacts it, there's an Emergency Drought Commission who actually goes in and kind of decides where the funding is going to go. She did offer some recommendations for some counties in southwest Oklahoma and in the Panhandle to receive some of those drought funds.
And no doubt that'll be some relief for landowners there.
Yes, definitely.
Okay, Jody Campeacci, our Ag Policy Specialist. I'm sure we'll see you again soon.
Yes, you will.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Al Sutherland with your Mesonet weather report. If you like cooler days and nights, fall in Oklahoma is for you. And we had a big break in air temperatures between Tuesday and Wednesday. Maximum air temperatures for Tuesday came in with 70s across the south and 60s to the north. Wednesday, the highs in the south were in the 60s with 50s in the north. So one day is warm, the next cold. How do we know where we're at for air temperatures? To answer that, we can turn to the Mesonet long-term averages. Here is a graph of average daily air temperatures for Minco for September and October. Minco is a mid-range site for state air temperatures. In early September, the daily average is up around 77 degrees, trailing down to 55 degrees by the end of October. Adding average high and average low lines to our graph shows us the temperature range we can expect. Now we'll add a bright, bold red line that shows the average air temperatures for 2013. While we see the typical up and down jumps in temperature, so far in 2013 there have not been any extremes above or below the average highs and lows for Minco. What we do see is slightly more of the 2013 line on the high side of the average line. That means the temperatures this fall have been slightly above average. With good rainfall, these slightly warmer temperatures should help get our wheat and canola crops off to a good start. The downside is those temperatures are also good for insect pests and weeds. Turning to rainfall, a 5-day rainfall map from last Friday, October 11th, through Wednesday evening shows that the southeast received the heaviest amounts of rain, some areas 4 or more inches, tapering off as we go north and west. The lighter green areas had 1 to 2 inches of rain. The blue areas typically had amounts near a ½ inch or less. Adding in rain for the last 30 days from mid-September through mid-October, the yellow and red areas really pop out. These are locations with 4 or more inches of rain. Most of the green-colored map areas received 2 or more inches of rain. On Tuesday, Governor Mary Fallin declared a drought emergency designation for Texas County in the Panhandle and 4 counties in the Southwest, Greer, Harmon, Jackson, and Tillman counties. This designation could allow assistance from the state's new Emergency Drought Relief Fund. Those designated counties and some other areas show up as the dry brown areas on a plan available water map from the surface down to 16 inches. Areas with good soil moisture are colored green and typically have 3 or more inches of water available for plant growth. That's it for this week's report. We hope you'll join us again next time for another Mesonet Weather Report.
We want to talk now about plant identification with our Extension Rangeland Specialist, Terry Bidwell. And Terry, we spent the last couple of years talking about extreme drought, but now we've had a rainy summer. Talk a little bit about what the conditions are like.
Sure. Well, during the drought, we end up with a lot of bare ground, and even people that weren't grazing real heavily ended up with bare ground. So once we start getting a lot of rainfall, we get a lot of broadleaf plants. Some people would call those weeds coming up, and so we're getting lots and lots of questions about what's this plant, what's that plant.
And it's more extreme than other transition years?
Yeah, this is in my career, this is the most extreme set of years, 2011, 2012, and then transition into 2013. I've never seen that big of a difference. In fact, I was predicting another year's worth of drought, and I'm glad I was wrong.
A lot of people are glad. This time of year, we're in early fall, is a good time to start identifying some of those plants that are in your pastures. Let's do that now and talk about why this is a good time.
Okay. In September, most of our plants are starting to mature. They're either got a flower or a grass seed head on them. And when people need to learn plants, the best way is to go to the field and learn them in place rather than looking at a picture or a drawing. And so this is the time of year to go out and do that.
And you've advised people over the years to sort of make a scrapbook.
Absolutely. You can come out and clip these off and put them in a little notebook or something and putting tape on them and then writing down something about them. And that's a real good way to learn. It's better than just looking at them.
This field we're in has a number of different plants that we can identify. Let's start that process. For example, what do we have right here?
Yeah, this is a plant we've had a lot of calls on. It's fairly common. It's an annual. It's called Snow on the Mountain. It's a euphorbs. It produces a white sap. Cattle won't eat it, goats will, but it produces a real high quality seed for wildlife. Now, when they become showy, that's when people get nervous and want, the world's coming to an end, I need to spray or whatever. Well, spraying this time of year won't do any good And these plants are episodic. They come in after this extreme weather and they'll go away in a while. So you just look at them and smile and go on.
Okay, kind of like I do the dandelions in my yard.
That's right.
What other kind of grasses do we have out here?
Well, let's look at one other forb that always shows up. This is called common broomweed. It's another annual. People don't really notice that a lot until it turns yellow this time of the year, and you'll see a lot of it this year. Again, it's episodic, comes in after real dry years. When we get a wet year, it'll go away in a while. It's not a big deal, but it's really showy right now.
And then some of the grasses?
Yeah, this is the state grass of Oklahoma. This is called Indian grass. You'll notice it all over now. It's really come up. It's kind of a golden plume. The bottom's kind of blue. And if you see the sun moving through this, it's golden. It's really pretty. That is the state grass of Oklahoma. Very high quality forage for cattle. Provides good cover for wildlife. It's one of the big 4 prairie grasses.
Okay, and then some of the other grasses?
This is called big blue stem, and one of the ways to recognize it is the top. It's got 3 kind of racemes, or these, and some people refer to it as turkey foot grass, but big blue stem. So it and Indian grass are 2 of the key prairie grasses in the tall grass prairie. Very high quality forage, provides a lot of good habitat for wildlife.
Okay, and some of the other things that are in the mix here, because there's quite a variety.
There's a lot of things here. This one is called silver blue stem. It's a native grass. You'll notice these white kind of plumes, very showy this time of the year. A low quality forage, usually an indicator of disturbance like along this road. Not a big issue, but it tends to be around where you've had some significant soil disturbance.
Okay, and why is it a good idea for landowners to have a gauge of what's in their pastures?
Well, all plants tell a story, and once you understand what that plant's telling you, you can imply grazing management. Perhaps you've got too high a stocking rate if certain plants show up every year, or if you've got to spray every year, you'll see a lot of plants coming, you're saying, man, my stocking rate's too high. They just kind of give you a feel for what's going on your place.
Okay, and there's a lot of resources out there to help you identify. Obviously, you can reach out to your county extension agent, and there's other spots that even you use.
Yeah, there's one website that's excellent. It's called USDA Plants Database. You can go do a search on that, and it's got every plant known to humankind. I think it's an incredible resource. Then we've got a plant ID book we've produced for Oklahoma, and that's available on our website.
Okay, great advice, Terry Bidwell, our Extension Rangeland Specialist. And we've set up a link to some of those resources for you on our website, sunup.okstate.edu.
Most cow-calf producers in Oklahoma have been fortunate this summer in that they've been able to put up adequate amounts of some good or not so good grass hay. And that's the important point that we need to discuss on today's Cow-Calf Corner. What is the quality of the hay that we have stored to feed those cows this winter? If we take a look at what kinds of protein supplementation needs to go with different qualities of hay, you'll see there's a very wide range of difference, and it's a big difference in terms of your back pocket, the amount of cost that it's going to take for the supplementation. Here's an example. If we have some real low quality grass hay, something that tests 4% crude protein or less, and we're going to feed it to spring calving cows at this time of the year, then it's going to take 2.2 pounds of a 40% crude protein supplement in order to meet the protein needs of those cows eating that hay. If they're getting some moderate quality hay, 6% crude protein, then it only takes half as much supplement in order to meet the protein needs of those cows. And if they're getting some real high quality grass hay, 8% crude protein or better, then we'll be able to feed that throughout the course of the fall and winter months without supplementation. Now let's take a look at what happens next spring after those cows calve. If they're receiving that real low quality grass hay and still getting the 40% crude protein supplement, those cows shortly after they calve require almost 5 pounds of that supplement per head per day. The moderate quality hay only requires about 3.3 pounds of the 40% crude protein supplement per head per day, whereas in the case of the real high quality hay, again, we can cut that almost in half down to 1.5 pounds for those cows to meet their protein requirements. I need to point out that what we're talking about is meeting the protein needs of these cows, not necessarily the energy needs. If the cows are going into the winter in thin body condition, this kind of supplementation program will not increase their body condition, and we'll need a lower protein, higher energy cube fed at much higher rates. But it's important that you know what the quality of the hay that you're going to feed so that you can match the protein supplement to it, and that way save a lot of dollars. And if you want to learn more about how to test this hay for the protein content, go to the SUNUP website. That's sunup.okstate.edu. Look under Show Links, and there we have a link to a fact sheet on how to collect a forage sample for hay testing, and that way you'll know what's in your hay and how to supplement it. Hey, we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Joining us once again for the latest in the grain markets is Kim Anderson. Kim, let's talk about this week. The shutdown is over. We're getting access back to the USDA. What does that mean for the markets?
Well, let's back up and look at what happened to the markets with the shutdown and start with soybeans. You can go back to Friday, September the 27th. Soybeans were trading at $13.20. On Monday the 30th, the day before the shutdown, they were at $12.83. On Tuesday the 1st, the day of the shutdown, they traded at $12.74. That's a 56-cent price decline. Now the caveat on that is that the beans were in a downtrend. You go back to September the 13th, they were trading at $14. So coming into the shutdown, beans were on a downtrend. They traded down heavy as the day of the shutdown. And then they just leveled off. They bottomed out, at $12.60, so slightly lower, about 14 cents lower than they were the day of the shutdown. If you look at corn, on Friday the 27th, the corn was at $4.54. Monday the 30th, $4.42. On the day of the shutdown, the 1st, $4.39. They traded in the range during the shutdown from $4.37 to $4.50. Wheat, both corn and beans were on downtrends coming into it. They trended down just a little more, bottomed out. Wheat was on an uptrend coming into the shutdown. On the 23rd of September at $6.98. On the 27th of September, $7.32. Monday the 30th, $7.39. On Tuesday the 1st, $7.45. You can look at that price increase there. About 50 cents there, and during the shutdown they traded from $7.42 to $7.65. In other words, what do we see in the commodities and the grains? Not a whole lot before and during the shutdown.
All right, now that's ended, how have they responded?
Essentially the same as they did during it. They're trading on commercial data. They're on sideways moves. Not much change.
All right. This week we did hear from a viewer in Australia, some things about the crop there. Tell us what's happening there.
Well, Australians right now, the USDA is predicting in the September report an average crop. They've had drought problems. Have a protein problem, but stress crop, lower yields, probably higher protein, and that could be negative for Oklahoma prices as we get into the November-December time period.
All right, last thing today, quickly. They've canceled the October WASDE completely. We're waiting for it to come out in November. How is that going to affect markets when that information does get to us?
I think that's the risky point but the good thing is they canceled the October report, so it gives the market until November the 8th to come to grips with what that November report is going to say. It gives USDA more time to get their data. There's some potential of volatile markets on the 8th and 9th when that report comes out, but I think it'll level out pretty fast after that.
All right, good information as always. Kim Anderson, Grain Marketing Specialist here at Oklahoma State University.
Hi, welcome to Shop Stop. We want to talk about drilling a hole where you already have, with a hole saw, where you already have one that's probably a little bit large.
Okay, so for example, we've got a board here that we've already drilled a hole in that's this size, but let's assume you want to use something larger. Well, you don't have any guide to keep your hole saw straight while you're starting the hole.
So one thing to do is you can either make a little jig, you can use some plexiglass so that you can see through it, or even if you just use some other wood, if there's a hole pattern around the hole that you can work off of, then you can center up on that and then have a centering hole for your arbor.
And the best way to do that is, if it's possible, and it's not always possible, is put it on the back side so it'll guide your hole saw mandrel till you get started in there. But you can also put it on top and just clamp it, center it, clamp it to the other board, and then that gives you a guide to start your hole saw.
The nice thing about using the plexiglass is you can see through it, and you can center it up on there from that.
So there's a tip on making a small hole bigger.
We'll see you next week on Shop Stop.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime at sunup.okstate.edu. You can also follow us on YouTube and social media. As we leave today, we're getting into the homecoming spirit by taking another ride with our favorite horse. We'll see you next time at SUNUP.